And now you're ready to learn your first stitch. It's called the knit stitch. There are two basic kinds of knitting methods, the English and the continental method. We're going to use the English method. The main difference is which hand you're holding the yarn in. Now that we have our 10 stitches, hold the needle with your cast on stitches in your left hand. And then hold the empty needle in your right hand. Before beginning the row, straighten the stitches, making sure that the working yarn hangs straight down in front toward the end of the needle. By the way, if you don't use the working yarn, which is the yarn attached to the ball, and you use the tail, which is this guy over here, actually I'm going to snip that a little shorter just so I don't get them confused. That. But if you use this, as you can see, you're going to end up with a really tiny scarf. So what I like to do is take my tail and just grab it right against the needle there and hold it in my left hand. That way, there's no way I'm going to confuse the two, and it's completely out of the way. Let's talk about how you hold your yarn. Some people like to wrap it around their pinky finger and put it on their index finger. There's all different ways. Everyone does it differently, right? My favorite way is just to grab it with these 3 fingers, and then when I begin my knit stitch, it wraps around my index finger like this. Nothing's going to feel comfortable at first, so just try it this way, and once the stitch itself becomes comfortable, then you can experiment with the hold. All knitters knit differently and hold their yarn differently. The hold is what controls the tension, and the idea is to make the stitches even and uniform as possible. So with the working yarn in back of the needles, insert the right needle into the stitch closest to the tip of the needle, this one here. And then hold the needle with your left thumb and index finger while you wrap the yarn around the needle. Bring it between the needles from back to front. With your right hand, bring the needle toward you and through the stitch, then slide it down to the tip of the left needle and slide the old stitch off. And that's your new stitch for your first row. So let's do that again, going from front to back on that first stitch there. This is our second stitch. You slide it through, wrap it around, holding it with your left hand. Pull the needle through and slide it off. So you're going in, wrap, through, and off. Now, here's a few tips. When you're doing the stitch, when you wrap it, you can use your left index finger to push the needle through if you want to. It's okay. And you can also use your right hand to push it off. If you find that the stitches are too far down your left needle, like if they're way back here and this is pulling real hard, you're going to be fighting your yarn right here. And you don't want to fight your yarn, you guys are friends. So you can just slide it toward the tip, that's fine. So just insert it, just put it in, wrap, pull the needle through, and you can use your finger and slide it off. In, wrap, pull it through, and slide it off. And it should slide off nice and easily because we did such a nice loose cast on row that was just snug enough but not too tight. In, wrap, through, and off. I'll slide those down a little more as we get to the end. In, around, through, and off. In, wrap, through, and off. And there's your first row. You guys doing okay over there? Yeah. Also, when you get to the end of each row, it's a good habit to get into of counting your stitches. Let's see, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We've still got all 10 on there. Okay, so you dropped a stitch. Well, big deal. This is just practice. I'm going to teach you how to fix it a little bit later, but when you're really knitting your square scarf, it's a great habit to get into to just count your stitches after every single row. When you start your second row, remember to make sure the yarn is hanging down in front of the needle, not wrapped around like this. If it's in the back, it's going to create an extra stitch, which we don't want. So you just put the yarn in front. When you're working multiple rows, keep a piece of paper and a pen or pencil handy to write down how many rows you've completed. Or you can also buy one of these handy row counters. You can do either one. So 1 row. When you knit every row, you're working in what's called a garter stitch. Let's start the next row and make sure to pull all your stitches nice and straight at the bottom of your needle and your working yarn hanging down by the end. So we're going in, around, through, and off. In, around, through, and off. In, around, through, off. In, around, through, and off. In, through. It's getting a little tight, so I'll scoot my stitches down more toward the end of the left needle. Straighten it all out. Again, remember, you can go ahead and push it with your index fingers if you need to push the end of the needle to help it through there. And off. Almost to the end of our second row. Around, through, and off. So that's our second row. So we're just gonna go switch it over, make sure everything's straight again, and count our stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Straighten that guy out. Lovely. So go ahead and keep knitting for a total of 7 rows. This DVD will pause automatically. So when you finish your 7th row, I'll be here waiting for you. How are you guys doing? Getting that 3rd row going okay? Yeah. Does yours look like this? Let me show you the way you remove the stitches from the needle so that they don't unravel, like this. We don't want that to happen. That would be really bad. All your work would go out the window. So we're going to do what's called binding off. When you're doing a knit stitch, you want to bind off and knit. Easy to remember, right? First, knit 2 stitches. 1, and then 2. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the left needle and we're going to grab that first stitch. Grab the first stitch. If you gotta pull this yarn down to grab it, that's okay. And you're gonna slide it over the second stitch and off the needle. So you're pulling the second stitch through that first stitch in a way. So let's do that again. We're gonna knit this stitch, wrap it around, pull it through, and then grab the first stitch, slide it over the second stitch and off the needle. Knit the next stitch, wrap it around, pull it through, loosen that up so you can get those off. Grab the second stitch and slide it off. Now, it's really key that you don't bind off too tightly because otherwise it won't be elastic and it's going to get all bunched up at the top where you bind off. Slide it off. So keep doing this until you only have 1 stitch at the end. We go knit, and grab, slide off. It's a little tricky at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's a piece of cake. Grab the second stitch. And again, you can push that right needle with your left index finger if you need to get it off. You don't want to drop any stitches, heaven forbid. Slide it off. Grab the first stitch, pull it over the second. We're almost there. Go knit. But if you do drop a stitch, don't stress, we can always fix it. Like that, see? Just gonna grab that guy, pull it through. At the very end, pull that first stitch over the second one. So now we've got a nice loop at the very, very end of our row. So what we wanna do is lock the last stitch. We're going to cut our yarn. Grab my cute little scissors here, cut a nice long piece of yarn. It's always good to have a long piece at the end because you can always trim it and weave it in later. And you just loop it through Pull it straight through the loop there and pull it tight. And you're all done. There's your first little square. See how stretchy the cast off is? There's no bunching or anything. It's all nice and elastic. Simple as that. Now you know how to finish off a piece. You know how to bind off. Some people also call it casting off, and they're both the same thing. That bind off looks a little tight. When you bind off, try to keep it nice and loose. Otherwise, your bind off roll will be too tight compared to your square. This will soon become second nature, and you'll be able to knit and gossip or play on your iPod and purl without even thinking about it.